I never thought I would end up in a police station on a Tuesday afternoon because of ice melt. But here we are, watching a middle-aged woman named Patricia try to explain why she had my property in her garage, while simultaneously claiming she bought it herself. It started 3 days ago when I got home from work around 6:30 in the evening. I live in Maple Ridge, a planned community in Aurora, Colorado, where every house looks almost identical, and the HOA rules could fill a small library. I am Yusuf Henderson, a software engineer who works remotely most days, and I had been living here for about 2 years. The neighborhood was nice enough. Quiet streets, decent neighbors, except for the HOA president Patricia Whitmore, who seemed to think her position gave her authority over everyone's lives down to the smallest detail. That particular Monday evening, I had stopped at the hardware store on my way home because Colorado winters are no joke, and the forecast predicted a serious storm coming through. I picked up a 50-pound bag of premium ice melt from Mountain Supply Hardware, one of those local places that actually knows what they are talking about. The stuff was not cheap either, almost $45 for the bag, but it was the good kind that would not damage concrete or hurt pets' paws. The cashier, an older guy named Ron who I had gotten to know over the past couple years, even made a point of showing me the batch number printed on the bag. "See this here," Ron said, pointing to a string of numbers stamped on the bottom corner. "That is batch A447TX9021. We just got this shipment in yesterday. It is the newest formula they have got. Real effective stuff, works down to -20 degrees. I thanked him, loaded the bag into my trunk and drove home. When I got to my house on Silverwood Lane, I parked in my driveway and hauled the heavy bag into my garage, setting it down next to my snow shovel and other winter supplies. I made a mental note of where I put it, right against the back wall, clearly visible. Then I went inside, made dinner, and did not think about it again until the next morning. Tuesday morning arrived with freezing rain, that nasty mix of precipitation that makes everything slick and dangerous. I got up early, around 6, planning to put down some of the ice melt before the walkway became a death trap. I went out to the garage, still half asleep, and stopped dead in my tracks. The bag was gone. Not moved, not pushed aside, completely gone. I stood there for a solid minute, thinking maybe I had put it somewhere else and forgotten. But no, I remembered exactly where I had placed it. The spot against the wall was empty except for some granules that had spilled when I set the bag down. I checked my car, thinking maybe I had left it in the trunk by mistake, but nothing. I looked around the garage, behind boxes, near the workbench, everywhere. The bag had vanished. That was when I started to get annoyed. My garage door had been closed all night, I was sure of it. I always closed it, which meant someone had opened it and taken the bag. I went back inside and pulled up the app for my security camera. I had installed one above the garage about 6 months ago after someone in the neighborhood had their bike stolen. The camera faced the driveway and caught the garage door in frame. I scrolled back through the footage to Monday evening and watched myself pull in, unload the bag, and put it in the garage before closing the door. Everything normal. Then I jumped ahead through the night, watching the timestamp tick by at high speed. Around 11:43 in the evening, the garage door started opening. I slowed the playback to normal speed and watched in disbelief. The door opened about 4 feet, enough for someone to duck under, and then a figure in a dark jacket slipped inside. The angle was not perfect, but I could make out enough details. The person was inside for maybe 2 minutes before emerging with my ice melt bag, struggling slightly with the weight. They walked back out under the partially open door, which then closed again. The whole thing took less than 3 minutes. I rewound and watched it again, this time focusing on trying to identify who it was. The jacket had a hood up, and the lighting was not great, but there was one clear moment when the person turned slightly toward the camera. I paused the frame and leaned closer to my phone screen. Even with the hood up, I recognized that posture, that particular way of walking. Patricia Whitmore, the HOA president, had broken into my garage and stolen my ice melt. For a moment I just sat there, trying to process what I was seeing. Patricia lived 4 houses down, in one of the larger corner lots. She was always going on about property values and community standards, sending nastagrams about trash cans being visible from the street or grass being a 1/4 inch too long. And here she was, committing what was essentially breaking and entering and theft, caught on camera. I saved the footage to my cloud storage, making sure I had multiple copies. Then I got dressed and walked down to her house. It was still early, barely 7 in the morning, but I was too angry to wait. The freezing rain had turned to sleet, and my walkway was already getting slick, which just made me more irritated. I needed that ice melt, and she had taken it. Patricia's house was one of those places that screamed HOA president lives here. Every shrub was trimmed to identical height, not a single decoration out of place. Even her mailbox looked like it had been measured with a ruler to ensure it met some invisible standard. I walked up to her door and rang the doorbell. Nothing. I rang it again and knocked. After a long minute, the door opened a crack and Patricia peered out, looking annoyed at being disturbed. "Yusuf, it is 7 in the morning. What do you want?" she asked, not opening the door any further. "I want my ice melt bag back," I said flatly. "The one you took from my garage last night around 11:43. Her expression did not change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. "I have no idea what you are talking about. I did not take anything from your garage." "I have you on camera, Patricia, opening my garage door and taking a 50-pound bag of ice melt. I can show you the footage right now if you want." She pursed her lips, and for a second I thought she might actually admit it. Instead, she pulled herself up straighter and looked down her nose at me. "Your garage door was wide open when I walked by last night. I assumed you had left it open by accident and something had fallen out. I picked up what I thought was trash blowing around and took it home for safekeeping. I was going to return it to you today." The lie was so blatant I almost laughed. "My garage door was not open. You opened it. And even if your story were true, why would you take a clearly labeled brand new bag of ice melt that obviously was not trash?" I did not look at it closely. "It was dark," she said, her voice taking on that sharp edge she used at HOA meetings when someone questioned her decisions. "And I am getting tired of your accusatory tone. If you want to discuss this further, you can submit a formal complaint to the HOA board." "Patricia, you stole from me." "I do not need to go through the HOA board to get my property back. Just give me the bag and we can forget this happened." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Finally, she said, "I do not have your bag." I threw out what I picked up because I thought it was garbage. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have things to do." She shut the door in my face. I stood there on her perfectly swept porch, rain pelting down, in complete disbelief. She was really going to stick with this story. I pulled out my phone and texted her, typing fast with cold fingers. "Patricia, I have clear video footage of you entering my garage and taking the ice melt. Either return it within the hour or I am filing a police report for theft." I watched through her front window and saw her pick up her phone, look at it, then set it back down without responding. Fine. If she wanted to play it this way, I would go to the police. I walked back home, got in my car, and drove to the Aurora Police Department's district office on Airport Boulevard. The officer at the front desk, a tired-looking woman in her 30s, listened to my story with patient professionalism. "So you have video evidence of this person taking property from your garage?" she asked. "Yes, and I can identify her clearly in the footage. She lives in my neighborhood. She is the HOA president." The officer, whose nameplate read Martinez, nodded and pulled out a form. "Okay, let us get this filed. I have to tell you, for a theft case like this, especially if it is a first offense and the item value is under $1,000, it is probably going to be treated as a misdemeanor. But if you have clear evidence, we can definitely pursue it." I gave her all the details, showed her the video footage on my phone, and provided Patricia's address. Officer Martinez watched the video twice, made notes, and told me an officer would follow up within 48 hours. "In the meantime," she said, "I would not contact her further about this. Let us handle it." I thanked her and drove home, feeling somewhat better that at least I had started the official process. But I still needed ice melt, and I was out $45 plus whatever this whole mess was going to cost in time and stress. I spent the rest of Tuesday working from home, checking my phone constantly to see if Patricia would text back. She never did. Wednesday morning, I got a call from an officer, James Decker, who said he would be coming by around 2 in the afternoon to take my formal statement and review the evidence. I spent the morning distracted, barely able to focus on the code I was supposed to be writing. Around 1:30, I got a text from my neighbor directly next door, Mike Sullivan. "Hey man, did you hear? Patricia is telling everyone you are harassing her and making false accusations. She sent out an email to the whole HOA." My stomach dropped. I logged into my email and sure enough, there was a message from the Maple Ridge HOA official account sent to all residents that morning. "Dear residents, it has come to my attention that false and defamatory accusations are being made against me personally by a resident in our community. I want to assure everyone that I have always acted in the best interests of our neighborhood and have never engaged in any inappropriate behavior. These accusations are baseless and appear to be motivated by a personal vendetta. I ask that if anyone is approached with negative stories about me or the HOA board, please remember that there are two sides to every story. Community harmony is our goal, and I hope we can move past this unfortunate situation quickly. Best regards, Patricia Whitmore, HOA President." I read it 3 times, my anger growing with each pass. She was not even subtle about it, clearly talking about me without naming me directly. My phone started buzzing with texts from neighbors, some asking what was going on, others taking sides without knowing any facts. Officer Decker arrived right on time at 2. He was a tall guy, probably in his late 40s, with the calm demeanor of someone who had seen everything. I showed him the garage, walked him through exactly what happened, and pulled up the video footage on my laptop so he could see it on a bigger screen. He watched it several times, making notes. "That is pretty clear footage," he said. "You can definitely identify her. And you are saying this bag was worth about $45, $44.50 plus tax, so just under $50 total. And she claims she thought it was trash and disposed of it. That is what she told me when I confronted her yesterday morning." Officer Decker nodded slowly. "Here is the thing. Even if she did throw it out, which I doubt, taking something from someone's garage without permission is still theft. The fact that she opened your garage door to do it makes it worse. I am going to go talk to her now, get her statement." "Do you have a copy of your receipt from the purchase?" I did, saved in my email from the hardware store. I forwarded it to him right away. He thanked me and said he would be in touch, then drove down to Patricia's house. I watched from my window, resisting the urge to walk down there myself. Officer Decker was at her door for about 20 minutes. I could not see much, but at one point Patricia stepped out onto her porch, gesturing emphatically. About an hour after Officer Decker left, I got a call from him. "So I spoke with Miss Whitmore," he said. "She is sticking with her story that she found the bag outside and threw it away. She claims she does not have it anymore." "That is impossible," I said. "The video clearly shows her taking it from inside my garage, and there was no time when the bag was outside." "I believe you," Officer Decker said. "The problem is, without the actual item, it is harder to prosecute. It becomes a he said, she said situation, even with the video. She can claim she picked up something else, or that she made a mistake. I am going to request that we do a check of her property, see if the bag is actually there. But I need to be straight with you. For a $50 theft case, getting a search warrant is going to be tough." I felt my frustration building. "So she can just steal something, lie about it, and get away with it because the item is not expensive enough?" "I did not say that. I am saying it is complicated. Give me a day or two to see what I can do. In the meantime, do you remember any other identifying information about the bag? Serial numbers, batch numbers, anything that could prove it is yours if we do find it?" That was when I remembered what Ron at the hardware store had shown me. "Actually, yes. The bag has a batch number on it, a 447TX9021. The guy at Mountain Supply Hardware specifically pointed it out to me when I bought it." I could hear the interest in Officer Decker's voice. "That is good. That is very good. If we can confirm that batch number is unique or limited, and we find a bag with that number at her property, that is solid evidence. Let me contact the store and see what I can find out." We hung up, and I felt a small surge of hope. Maybe this would work out after all. I spent the rest of Wednesday evening trying to focus on anything other than the situation, but it was hard. The HOA email had stirred up the neighborhood, and I was getting messages ranging from supportive to accusatory. One neighbor, an older woman named Dorothy who lived across the street, texted me that she had seen Patricia acting suspicious the last few nights, but had not thought much of it. Another neighbor, one of Patricia's friends apparently, sent me a message saying I should be ashamed of myself for harassing a woman who volunteers her time for the community. Thursday morning, Officer Decker called me again. I spoke with the owner of Mountain Supply Hardware. Turns out that batch number is pretty specific. That particular batch was only delivered to 3 stores in the Denver metro area, and Mountain Supply only got 30 bags total. The owner, Ron, says he specifically remembers selling you one on Monday evening because you two chatted about the new formula. He also says they keep very detailed inventory records and can confirm the batch number on the bag you purchased. "So, what does that mean?" I asked. "It means if we find a bag with that batch number at Miss Whitmore's property, there is no way it is a coincidence. I'm going to go back to her house today and ask again if she has the bag. If she says no, I am going to request permission to check her garage. If she refuses, I will work on getting a warrant, but that might take a few days. Thank you, officer. I really appreciate you taking this seriously. Theft is theft, regardless of the amount," he said. "I will let you know how it goes." Around 3 that afternoon, Officer Decker called back. I answered on the first ring. "Interesting development," he said. "I went back to Miss Whitmore's house and told her about the batch number. I said that if she cooperated and showed us her garage, we could clear this up quickly. She refused at first, said it was an invasion of privacy. But then I mentioned that I could get a warrant and she changed her tune. Said I could look, but she was sure I would not find anything because she does not have your bag. And did you find it?" "We did." It was in her garage, pushed into a back corner behind some storage bins, but still clearly visible once we moved them. And guess what batch number was stamped on the bottom? A 447 TX 9021. Exactly. She tried to claim she had bought it herself at a different store, but when I pointed out that this batch was only distributed to 3 stores and asked for her receipt, she could not produce one. She then changed her story and said maybe she accidentally picked up yours but genuinely thought it was trash and had not gotten around to throwing it out yet. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. So, what happens now? Now I issue her a citation for misdemeanor theft. Given the circumstances, the video evidence, the false statements she made to police, and the fact that she tried to hide the item, the DA will probably pursue charges. She will have to appear in court. You will need to be willing to testify if it goes to trial, but most of these cases end in a plea deal. I am absolutely willing to testify. Good. I am going to return the bag to you today. Miss Whitmore was not happy about the citation, but that is how it goes. I will have the paperwork ready by this evening. True to his word, Officer Decker showed up at my house around 6 with my ice melt bag, looking exactly as it had when I bought it, batch number and all. He handed me a case number and explained what would happen next. Patricia had been cited, would receive a court date, and the district attorney would decide whether to prosecute or offer a plea deal. One more thing, Officer Decker said as he was leaving. She tried to file a counter-complaint against you for harassment, saying you have been intimidating her. I explained that you filed a legitimate theft report with evidence and that her complaint did not have merit. Just wanted you to be aware she tried. Of course she did. I thanked him again and brought my bag inside, setting it in the garage where it should have been all along. The whole situation felt surreal. I had lived here for 2 years without major incident, and now the HOA president had a theft citation because she stole my ice melt and lied about it. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. Apparently word had gotten around the neighborhood that police had been at Patricia's house and that she had been cited for theft. The HOA email chain lit up with confused residents asking what was going on. Patricia sent another email, this one much more defensive. Dear residents, as some of you may have heard, there was an unfortunate misunderstanding today involving local police. I want to assure everyone that this is being blown completely out of proportion by one individual with a personal grudge. The matter involves a simple mix-up over property, and I am confident it will be resolved quickly. I remain committed to serving this community with integrity and transparency. Patricia Whitmore, HOA President. The responses were mixed. Some people expressed support for Patricia, saying they could not believe she would do anything wrong. Others were more skeptical, especially those who had dealt with her heavy-handed HOA enforcement tactics in the past. One resident, Tom Chen, who lived 2 streets over, replied to all with a pointed message. If this is just a simple mix-up, why did police issue a citation? And why have there not been any details shared with the community? If Patricia is innocent, she should be transparent about what actually happened. That seemed to open the floodgates. More residents chimed in, asking questions, sharing their own stories of conflicts with Patricia and the HOA board. I stayed out of it, not responding to the emails or engaging in the debate. Officer Decker had advised me not to discuss the case publicly while it was pending, and I was happy to follow that advice. Friday morning, I got a certified letter in my mailbox from the HOA. Inside was a notice of violation, claiming that my garage door had been left open on the night of the theft, violating community standards for security and appearance. There was a fine of $200 attached, and a demand that I appear before the HOA board the following Tuesday to address the violation. The audacity was breathtaking. Patricia was using her position to retaliate against me for reporting her theft. I scanned the letter and emailed it to Officer Decker, asking if this constituted harassment or witness intimidation. He responded within an hour, saying he would forward it to the DA's office and that it definitely did not look good for Patricia's case. I also posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, something I rarely did, with a simple message. For those asking what happened this week, here are the facts. On Monday evening, I purchased ice melt from Mountain Supply Hardware and stored it in my closed garage. That night at 11:43, someone opened my garage door without permission, entered, and took the bag. I have clear security camera footage of this. I reported the theft to police and provided all evidence. The police investigation confirmed the item was taken from my property and located it. A citation for theft was issued. I have now received an HOA violation notice claiming my garage was open that night, which is factually false and contradicted by time-stamped video evidence. I will not be commenting further on the pending legal matter, but I wanted to set the record straight on the facts. I did not name Patricia specifically, but everyone knew who I was talking about. The post got dozens of comments within an hour. Several neighbors came forward with their own experiences of what they felt was HOA overreach or unfair treatment by Patricia. One resident shared that Patricia had threatened them with fines for parking their own car in their own driveway because it was a work truck with a company logo, which she claimed violated the no commercial vehicles rule. Another said Patricia had tried to fine them for having the wrong color wreath on their door during Christmas. The tide was clearly turning against her, and by Friday evening, there was a new email thread started by several residents calling for an emergency HOA meeting to discuss leadership concerns and due process issues. The HOA bylaws apparently allowed for a vote to remove board members with sufficient cause, and it seemed like people were getting serious about it. Saturday morning, I was drinking coffee and trying to catch up on work when there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Patricia standing there, and she looked rough. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing a sweatshirt instead of her typical pressed blouse. "Yusuf, can we talk?" she asked, her voice strained. I hesitated. "I do not think that is a good idea. There is a legal case pending. Please, just 5 minutes, I need to explain." Against my better judgment, I stepped out onto the porch, leaving the door open behind me. "What do you want, Patricia?" She took a breath, looking uncomfortable. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I should not have taken your bag, and I should not have lied about it. I am under a lot of stress, financial stress you do not know about, and when I saw that you had bought that expensive ice melt, I was not thinking clearly. My husband lost his job 3 months ago, and we are drowning in bills. I could not afford to buy ice melt, and I panicked." I stared at her. "So you broke into my garage and stole mine instead of just asking for help or buying the cheaper stuff?" I know it sounds insane. It was insane. I have been trying so hard to keep up appearances, to not let anyone know we are struggling, and I just made one terrible decision after another trying to cover it up. Her eyes were watery now. "I am sorry. I am genuinely sorry. I will pay you back for the bag for your time, whatever you want. I just need you to drop the charges." I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt bad for her situation, genuinely. Losing a job and struggling financially was rough. But another part of me was still angry at how she had handled this. The lies, the retaliation with the fake HOA violation, the emails painting me as a liar. "Patricia, I get that you are going through a hard time, but you did not just make one bad decision. You stole from me, you lied to the police multiple times, you tried to hide the evidence, and then you used your HOA position to retaliate against me with a fake violation notice. If you had just owned up to it from the start, maybe we could have worked something out. But you made this so much worse. I know, she said quietly. I know I did, and I will face whatever consequences come from that. But please, if you drop the charges, I will resign from the HOA. I will make sure that violation notice is voided. I will do whatever you need. I thought about it for a moment. I need to think about this, and I need to talk to the DA's office. This is not just up to me anymore. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. Okay, thank you for even considering it. I really am sorry, Yusuf. She walked back down the street to her house, and I went inside, feeling conflicted. I called Officer Decker and explained the conversation. He listened carefully. You need to know, he said, that even if you want to drop it, the DA might pursue it anyway. She lied to police, which is its own issue. And given the retaliation attempt with the HOA notice, they might see it as a pattern of behavior that needs to be addressed. But I will let them know you are considering not pressing charges and see what they say. Sunday was quiet. I stayed home, worked on some personal projects, and tried not to think about the whole mess. Monday morning, I got a call from an assistant district attorney named Rachel Vargas. Mr. Henderson, I understand you spoke with the defendant over the weekend, she said, her tone professional but not unfriendly. I want to be clear about something. While your willingness to press charges is a factor, we have enough evidence to proceed without your full cooperation if necessary. Miss Whitmore made multiple false statements to law enforcement, attempted to hide evidence, and engaged in what appears to be witness retaliation. These are serious issues beyond just the theft itself. I understand, I said. She apologized and said she was going through financial difficulties. That may be true, and the court will take that into consideration. But financial stress does not excuse criminal behavior or lying to police. Here is what I can tell you. We are willing to offer her a plea deal. She pleads guilty to misdemeanor theft, pays restitution to you for the full value of the item plus any additional costs you incurred, completes community service, and agrees to resign from any HOA positions she currently holds. In exchange, we will not pursue the additional charges for false statements to police. If she refuses the plea, we will take this to trial and pursue all charges. That seems fair, I said. We will be contacting her attorney today. The court date is set for 2 weeks from now. You will need to be available to testify if she does not take the plea, but I think she will. Sure enough, the following week I got a call from Rachel Vargas saying Patricia had accepted the plea deal. She would plead guilty at the hearing, pay me restitution of $100 to cover the bag, my time, and associated costs, complete 50 hours of community service, and submit her resignation from the HOA board. The false statement charges would be dropped as part of the agreement. The court hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday at the Arapahoe County Courthouse in Centennial. I took the morning off work and drove down, parking in the public lot and making my way through security. The courtroom was one of those standard municipal setups, wood paneling and fluorescent lights, about a dozen other cases on the docket that morning. Patricia was there with a public defender, sitting in the front row looking miserable. When our case was called, we both stood and approached the bench. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s named Judge Brennan, reviewed the plea agreement. Miss Whitmore, you are pleading guilty to misdemeanor theft. Do you understand that this will result in a criminal record? Judge Brennan asked. Yes, Your Honor, Patricia said quietly, and you understand the terms of this plea agreement. Restitution of $100 to the victim, 50 hours of community service to be completed within 6 months, and resignation from your position with the Homeowners Association. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Henderson, you are the victim in this case. Do you agree to these terms? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Brennan made some notes, then looked at Patricia with a hard expression. Miss Whitmore, I have read the police reports in this case. What concerns me is not just the initial theft, but your subsequent behavior. You lied to law enforcement multiple times, attempted to hide evidence, and then used your position of authority to retaliate against the victim. These actions demonstrate a troubling pattern of behavior and a lack of respect for the law. The only reason I am accepting this plea is because the victim has agreed, and because you have no prior record. But understand this: if you violate any terms of this agreement, if you fail to pay the restitution or complete the community service, I will not hesitate to revoke this deal and pursue the maximum penalties. You understand? Yes, Your Honor, I understand. Restitution is to be paid within 30 days. Community service hours must be logged with the court probation office, and I expect your resignation from the HOA to be submitted within 1 week. We are adjourned. The gavel came down and it was over. Patricia left quickly with her attorney, not looking at me. I walked out into the Colorado sunshine feeling like a weight had lifted. It was not about revenge or seeing her punished. It was about the principle of the thing. You cannot just take people's stuff and lie about it, especially when you hold a position of community trust. When I got home, there was already an email from the HOA board secretary, informing all residents that Patricia had resigned her position effective immediately due to personal reasons. A special election would be held next month to choose a new president. The fake violation notice against me had been voided, and the board apologized for any confusion or inconvenience. Over the next few weeks, things gradually returned to normal in Maple Ridge. The neighborhood gossip eventually moved on to other topics. Patricia and her husband kept to themselves, and I rarely saw them around. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that her husband had found a new job, which I was glad to hear. I did not wish them ill, despite everything. The restitution check arrived exactly on time, certified mail, with a brief note attached. Yusuf, again, I am deeply sorry for my actions and the trouble I caused. There is no excuse for what I did. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you cannot. Thank you for not making this worse than it already was, Patricia. I deposited the check and filed the note away. Forgiveness was complicated. I was not angry anymore, but I also was not going to forget what happened. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. The HOA election happened in late March, and a neighbor named George Martinez won the presidency. He was a retired teacher, reasonable and fair, and his first act was to propose a complete review of the HOA rules to make them less restrictive and more focused on genuine community issues rather than nitpicking. The proposal passed almost unanimously. Life in Maple Ridge improved after that. George ran the HOA meetings efficiently, without the petty power plays that had characterized Patricia's tenure. People seemed happier, more willing to engage with their neighbors, less worried about ridiculous violations for minor infractions. As for me, I kept my ice melt in the garage and actually used it several times that winter. Every time I saw the batch number on the bag, I thought about the whole bizarre situation. In some ways, it was a reminder that people are complicated. Financial stress and fear can make people do things they never would otherwise. But it was also a reminder that actions have consequences, and that standing up for yourself matters, even when it is uncomfortable. One thing I learned from the whole experience is that documentation is everything. If I had not had that security camera, if I had not saved my receipt, if the hardware store had not had those detailed batch records, it would have been nearly impossible to prove what happened. Patricia could have lied and gotten away with it, and I would have been out both the money and the bag. I also learned something about community dynamics. The HOA had operated under Patricia's control for so long that people had gotten used to it, even when they did not like it. But once the situation with the theft came to light, it gave others permission to speak up about their own concerns. Sometimes it takes one person standing up to change the whole dynamic. That summer, I ran into Patricia at the grocery store. It was awkward at first, both of us seeing each other in the produce section and freezing. But then she gave me a small nod and I nodded back. We did not talk, but it felt like an acknowledgement that we both had moved on. She looked better, healthier, less stressed than she had during those weeks in winter. I hoped she was doing okay. In October, I saw that she and her husband had put their house up for sale. I was not surprised. After everything that happened, staying in Maple Ridge probably felt impossible for them. The house sold within a month to a young couple with 2 kids who seemed nice enough. I welcomed them to the neighborhood and helped them figure out where the best pizza place nearby was located. The whole experience changed how I thought about neighborhoods and communities. Living in an HOA has benefits, sure, but it also creates these weird power dynamics where volunteer positions can go to people's heads. Patricia was not some evil villain. She was a person who made bad choices under pressure, and then compounded those choices with worse ones trying to cover them up. The system that gave her unchecked authority to issue fines and violations without oversight made the problem worse. Under George's leadership, the HOA implemented new rules requiring board decisions to be made collectively rather than unilaterally by the president. There were also new procedures for violations, including a mandatory review process before fines could be issued. It made the whole system fairer and less prone to abuse. I also made an effort to get to know my neighbors better after everything happened. Mike next door and I started having occasional barbecues. Dorothy across the street and I would chat when we both happened to be getting our mail at the same time. Tom Chen and I discovered we were both into hiking and started meeting up on weekends to explore trails in the mountains west of Denver. Building those genuine connections made the neighborhood feel less like a collection of houses and more like an actual community. The security camera that caught Patricia in the act became something of a neighborhood talking point. Several other residents installed their own cameras after hearing what happened. Crime was not really a problem in Maple Ridge, but the peace of mind was worth it. Looking back on the whole thing now, more than a year later, it feels almost surreal that all of that drama happened over a $50 bag of ice melt. But it was never really about the ice melt. It was about honesty, accountability, and the idea that nobody is above the rules, not even the person in charge of enforcing them. I still live in Maple Ridge. I still deal with the HOA, though it is a much more reasonable organization now. I still shop at Mountain Supply Hardware, where Ron still remembers the batch number incident and brings it up with a laugh whenever I come in. And I still have a security camera pointed at my garage, just in case. The batch number on that ice melt bag, a 447 TX 9021, became a kind of inside joke in my mind. It was such a specific, mundane detail that ended up being the key piece of evidence in the whole case. Without it, Patricia could have claimed she bought her own bag somewhere else. With it, there was no room for doubt. It reminded me that sometimes the smallest details matter the most. I occasionally wonder what Patricia tells people about why they moved away from Maple Ridge. Does she admit what happened, or does she spin some other story? I will never know, and honestly, it does not matter. She paid her debt, served her community service, and hopefully learned something from the experience. That is all I can ask for. The community service requirement was interesting too. I found out later that she ended up volunteering at a local food bank, which felt appropriate given that her defense had included financial hardship as a factor. Maybe being around people who were actually struggling gave her some perspective. Or maybe it was just 50 hours she had to get through. Either way, she completed it on time according to the court records. One unexpected consequence of the whole situation was that it made me more aware of people in the neighborhood who might be struggling quietly. A few months after everything settled down, I noticed that an elderly couple 3 doors down had not been maintaining their yard, which was very unlike them. Instead of judging or reporting it to the HOA, I stopped by to check on them. Turned out the husband had been ill and they were having trouble keeping up with everything. I helped them with some yard work and connected them with some local services that could assist. If the Patricia situation had not happened, I probably would have just minded my own business. The ice melt bag itself became a conversation piece too. Friends who heard the story would ask to see the famous batch number, and I would show them the faded printing on the bag that had been the key to proving the theft. I used the last of it during a late spring storm in April, and when the bag was finally empty, I actually took a photo of the batch number before throwing it away. A silly memento, but somehow it felt right to document the end of that chapter. In terms of practical lessons, I tell people now to always keep receipts for anything remotely valuable, to invest in basic security measures like cameras, and to stand up for yourself when something is wrong even if it is uncomfortable. Too many people let things go to avoid conflict, which just enables bad behavior to continue. If I had not pushed back against Patricia, she would have gotten away with it and probably would have felt emboldened to do similar things to other people. The legal system worked the way it was supposed to in this case, which was reassuring. Officer Decker took the complaint seriously despite the relatively low dollar amount. The DA's office pursued appropriate charges and offered a fair plea deal. The judge held Patricia accountable while also being proportional in the sentencing. It restored some of my faith in the process. Living in Aurora, Colorado has been good overall. The winters are harsh, which is why ice melt is such a necessity, but the summers are beautiful and the access to outdoor recreation is incredible. Maple Ridge, despite the HOA drama, is actually a pretty nice neighborhood with good people. The Patricia situation was an aberration, not the norm. I think about how differently things could have gone. If I had not had the camera, if Ron had not pointed out the batch number, if Officer Decker had not been thorough in his investigation, if the DA had decided it was not worth pursuing, if Patricia had been a better liar. Any of those factors could have changed the outcome completely. It made me grateful for the combination of preparation, documentation, and good people doing their jobs properly. The whole experience also taught me about the importance of proportional response. I could have made a huge scene, could have posted the video all over social media, could have tried to make Patricia's life miserable beyond just recovering my property and seeing justice done. But that would not have accomplished anything positive. I stuck to the facts, worked through proper channels, and let the system handle it. That restraint probably helped the neighborhood heal and move on more quickly. Sometimes I drive past Patricia's old house and see the new family that lives there now. Their kids play in the yard, they have friendly dogs, and they seem happy. It is a reminder that houses are just structures, and what really matters is the people in them and how they treat each other. Patricia's house is not some cursed place. It is just a house where someone made mistakes and then moved on. The winter after everything happened was actually quite mild, ironically enough. I barely needed ice melt at all. But I bought another bag anyway, same brand, though I did not check the batch number this time. It sits in my garage as insurance against those occasional storms that hit when you least expect them, which in Colorado can happen even in spring. One thing I appreciated after everything settled was how many neighbors reached out to express support or share their own HOA horror stories. It created a sense of solidarity, a shared understanding that we were all just trying to live our lives, and sometimes the systems meant to help us end up causing problems instead. That collective frustration led to real changes in how the HOA operated, which benefited everyone. George, the new HOA president, actually asked me at one point if I wanted to join the board. I declined. I had no interest in being involved in neighborhood politics after everything that happened. I was happy to be an engaged resident, to follow the rules, to contribute to the community in normal ways. But I did not need to be in any position of authority. Let someone else deal with those headaches. The Facebook post I made stating the facts of the case stayed up and actually became a reference point whenever anyone had questions about what happened. I did not add to it or comment further, but it served its purpose of setting the record straight. Some people still reach out occasionally asking about details, and I usually just refer them to the post and leave it at that. Financially, the $100 restitution more than covered the actual cost of the bag and my time. I thought about donating the excess to charity, but ended up putting it into a community fund that George established for neighborhood improvements. It felt like the right way to close that loop, turning something negative into something positive for everyone. One lasting effect is that I am much more conscious about garage security now. I always double-check that the door is closed, and I periodically review the camera footage to make sure everything is working properly. It is a small price to pay for peace of mind, and it takes almost no effort once it becomes a habit. Looking at the bigger picture, the whole situation was a reminder that communities are made up of flawed humans, and systems are only as good as the people operating them. Patricia was not a good HOA president, but that does not mean HOAs are inherently bad. George proved that someone reasonable and fair could use the same position to actually improve neighborhood life. It is about the people always. The plea deal outcome felt just about right. Patricia faced consequences, paid restitution, lost her position of authority, but also had a chance to move forward without a more serious criminal record that would haunt her forever. Proportional justice. She learned a hard lesson. I got my resolution, and the neighborhood moved on. That is all you can really ask for in a situation like this. As time passes, the incident fades more into the background of neighborhood history. New residents move in who never heard about it. The people who were here remember, but it is not the defining story of Maple Ridge anymore. Life moves on, which is how it should be. We cannot let one incident, however dramatic at the time, define everything forever. I still use Mountain Supply hardware for all my home improvement needs. Supporting local businesses matters, and Ron's help with the batch number documentation was invaluable. He jokes that I am his most famous customer now, which is silly but kind of fun. Every community needs places like that, where you are not just a transaction but a person they know and care about. The ice melt saga, as I sometimes call it, became one of those stories that defines a period of my life. Not the most important thing that ever happened to me, but significant enough to warrant reflection. It was about standing up for what was right, even in a small way, even when it was uncomfortable. Those moments matter. They shape who we are and how we interact with the world around us. Living in an HOA will always have complications. There will always be rules that seem silly, decisions you disagree with, neighbors who have different priorities. But after everything that happened, I believe the key is engagement. Pay attention to what the board is doing. Participate in meetings, vote in elections, be willing to speak up when something is wrong. Communities work best when people care enough to stay involved. The security camera footage of Patricia entering my garage and taking the ice melt is still saved in my cloud storage, backed up multiple times. I will probably never delete it, even though the case is closed and done. It is a record of what happened, evidence that I was not making it up or exaggerating. Sometimes you need that proof, that validation that you were right to stand up for yourself. In the end, the whole experience made me appreciate the boring, uneventful days more. Most of the time, nothing dramatic happens. You go to work, come home, live your life, interact with neighbors in passing, and that is it. Those normal days are actually pretty great when you think about it. Drama like the ice melt incident is exhausting and stressful. Give me boring any day. I think Patricia would probably agree with that sentiment now. Her attempt to save a few dollars on ice melt ended up costing her far more in legal fees, stress, reputation, and ultimately led to them moving. Sometimes the price of doing the wrong thing is far higher than just doing the right thing in the first place. Hopefully, she carries that lesson forward into whatever comes next for her and her husband. The batch number A447TX9021 will always be burned into my memory, along with Ron's face when he showed it to me at the hardware store, having no idea it would become crucial evidence in a theft case. Life is funny that way. Little moments that seem insignificant at the time turn out to be pivotal. Pay attention to details. They matter more than you think. So that is the story of how the HOA president stole my ice melt bag and got caught because of a batch number. It is weird. It is dramatic. It is honestly kind of absurd when you step back and look at it. But it is also real. It happened. And it changed things in small but meaningful ways for me and for the Maple Ridge community. Sometimes truth is stranger than any fiction you could write, and sometimes a 50-pound bag of ice melt becomes the center of a whole saga that nobody saw coming.